Oh, cool. No, I'll go yeah. I even get a chair today. Look at this. Wow, such kindness. That was awesome. I really enjoyed today's discussions. Mark, I feel like I found a new friend in you just from this. We can be best friends. We don't even need. Well, I guess AI did connect us through this conference. So lots of great questions. You can still submit your questions. I'm going to try to get through as many as possible in this panel, and of course, there's time for discussion afterwards. One question which stood out to me that came through here was the quote, "Trough of Disillusionment will likely arrive in the next 18 months," which is this person's guess for AI. So any responses on, do you think that's coming? And assuming it's coming, how do we expect that to impact our own uses of AI?
Seems difficult to make a very broad claim like that. I think there are certainly areas that are completely transformed, like code generation and text generation, but maybe other areas like, mass unemployment or something like that, not something that, maybe there's going to be a trough of disillusionment for people who think there's going to be mass unemployment. I probably would agree with that.
Yeah, I'll chime in here too. In terms of the disillusionment, I mean, if they're talking about there's a bubble popping, I disagree with that. Like when you look at applied AI, I feel like we're just scratching the surface there. For the most part, all the stuff out there right now, to me, they're toys. They're fun toys that you can play with, and they do really, really cool things. But really making enterprise value, extracting enterprise value out of that's really not there yet. There's efficiency gains, and I think some people have talked about this, where something can do something faster because of some type of model that will help you do that. To me, that's useful. It's going to be entirely more disruptive when AI lets you do something fundamentally differently. It's like when cloud came. So everyone had servers on racks, and cloud came along, and what they did was they lifted and shifted. They took everything there, and they moved it over there. It's like when COVID came, everyone went online, and then you would have happy hour on Zoom. You've got to think completely differently when you have this kind of technology, and the easiest way to do it is lift and shift. But once people start thinking ground up, if this was here from the beginning, and you erased all of history, how would things look? And that's when you're going to get true innovation, and we're just not there yet. So I don't know if that's exactly what they were talking about with us.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I like what you're saying. I think that there is just so many different things that are happening. We put it all under the umbrella of AI, but I mean, enterprise AI, consumer AI. There's different formats of text, video. There's so much that's happening. I think there's many troughs of disillusionment that are happening. I mean, many of us have friends and colleagues who are feeling that way about ChatGPT because they just kind of made the first effort. It was kind of cool, but they can't really get it to work for them. So there's disillusionment there. I think so across all these different formats, product lines, consumer, enterprise, I think there's a lot of these troughs that we are hitting, but I think there's so much happening that it just kind of shifts a little bit, like we're playing a game of tennis or ping pong right now, and I think it's going to keep a sustained level of tornado for a while.
Just my own personal experience here. I don't think it's like 18 months disillusionment. It's hard to make that prediction, like you said, but I think there is an element of disillusionment even now when people sort of, the impression is, I can just start using AI and my projects become easier. And I think it's proved out that that's definitely not the case. There is a study from Andreessen, you all could look it up, I recommend. I think it's like 16 ways enterprise AI something. It was like published in March, but I think what it said was of AI budgets that are out there, 75% of the AI budget is still towards engineering work, not AI model usage, which kind of shows that just adoption doesn't mean that like there's not hard engineering work to do and actual problems to solve related to it. So I think that's also something people experience. So another question, when approaching LLMs and SLMs, which for those that need that, that's small language models. What is the best way to clean up in-house data to better prepare for usage of those models?
You're hoping one of us was going to answer that?
I'm not going to answer it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to
but you're
comment
like
on your answer.
You're like the best person to answer it, though, which is difficult. I suppose the first thing to say is, like, most people assume that they can come at these problems by just having more data is the solution, and in reality, that's probably not the case. So I think the big thing is about making sure it's well structured, and particularly when we think about building RAG systems, or do people know what I mean when I say a RAG system? Yeah, most, but some shaking heads. But so retrieval, when we're putting those data sets together, I think it's about trying to make sure that you're only bringing stuff in that actually is useful for the task that you're trying to accomplish to begin with, and then build from there, rather than trying to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
I mean, I think it depends on the type of data. If it's instruction fine-tuning data, the reinforcement learning methods are very sensitive to data quality, so there are methods for filtering that. If it's for text generation, different methods for that. So I think, maybe activity that used to go into pre-training models now just transfers into doing these different types of work, like data filtering becomes really, really important. So I just view it as maybe we don't have to spend as much time doing pre-training anymore. Other people do that for us, and then there's higher work to do up the stack to get things into applications.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to your point is, I think, where is it? Met a friend, Bob, during coffee break. Shout out, Bob, wherever you're at. There you are, my friend. So we were having the discussion around these systems, and I think there is a general so an expectation that, like, if you're getting into this technology, you're going to have to fine-tune your own model and have your own model. And actually, for, I would say, 98% of cases, that's just simply not the case. And these sort of retrieval-based methods, it doesn't mean you're not integrating your own data, right? The way you get value out of these systems is integrating your own data, but often it's not creating your own model. The majority of problems you need to solve are solvable by other types of data integration, like retrieval. Kind of along with that, I can't find it. Again, there's a lot of questions, but there was some question about, like, do we really need a Christian or Bible-specific large language model to fulfill all these like chat applications that we're trying to build, or speech applications, or other things? Especially when you can, I think, Spence, you mentioned the long context windows and putting a book. In that case, it was translation, but of course you can put all sorts of instructions and things into these large models and have them fulfill various of your requirements. So any thoughts on that into the future of sort of domain-specific language models in the Christian missional space versus just using these large models in creative ways?
Do we need? I would love to know who asked this question, because this morning I really tried to explain why we need. If you want to steal the copyrights of Bibles, you don't need. If you want to give the data of people in sensitive countries to OpenAI or other existing LLM, you don't need. Okay, so if you just want to use it for yourself, of course you don't need. But if we want to be, I don't know the word in English, serious, with what we all do and try to do for God's kingdom, yes, absolutely, we need, in my mind. And that will help the body of Christ if we have one. It does not mean that in some cases you should not use this or this existing model. And as some of you said we don't hear very well the other people speaking, so I guess you gave very good answers. So, but that's true that some of the issues can be solved with a good RAG, a good database, with a good retrieval in some cases. But it's also about who get the data. So I think that's one of the really, really sensitive points in my mind.
And to add to that, I think you're right. It depends on what you're using it for. If it's for a ministry, but you're doing something very general, you don't need it, because the ones out there are probably going to do better than the ones that you build. And remember, when you fine-tune something, there's a trade-off. You might fine-tune it, it might be more domain-specific, but then you're losing the intelligence of the base model. So you got to know when you ought to be doing that. So if you fine-tune too much, now the model is really dumb. It's just going to look at the tunes that you've given it. And so you got to plan that properly. So there are cases that you do need it. So one thing that we're doing is creating a domain-specific label maker. And so if I want to label content, the stuff out there will say things like, this is a video, this is a talk, 20 minutes long, that sort of thing. What if I want to know whether it's charismatic or not? Or if I want to know whether it's an apologetics talk, or if it's about some other Christian-y term? That's something that we'll need and we'll understand way better than the world will understand. So in that sense, if you're using an LLM to label things, I believe you'll need this kind of domain-specific knowledge, because then we can do things like optimizing for spiritual maturity, like things like that. Those are things that we really understand and the world is going to get wrong. Or if we're building a discipleship app like we were talking about, this is very domain-specific, so the language that's necessary is important. The precision is important. In that case, you need it. But in vastly other cases, you probably don't, but that's a real generalization.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I'm the moderator of this, which means I have the privilege of just asking my own questions as well. Sorry if I don't get to all yours, but that's the way it works. So I do notice we have a couple perspectives from industry here as well. So Mark and Spence, I'm wondering if you have any comments or thoughts for this group, which I think the majority are coming from a missional sort of nonprofit side, really about some of the benefits of being willing to partner outside of the nonprofit space with industry companies, for-profit companies, specifically as related to this technology. What are some of the benefits of doing that, or what are some of the perspectives that maybe industry can provide that would benefit the kind of missional side? Any thoughts?
I'd love to jump in on that. I think a little bit to what you're saying, Nick, with like the cost to go and build our own LLM, like it's just so high, and just generally a lot of the tools that are being created, it's not easy, it's not cheap, and the opportunity to, I go way back, probably 15 years ago, and had the opportunity to work with different companies that were licensing great intellectual property and software and engines that were there, and it could be applied to even memorization, things that could be exclusively licensed for Bible scripture memory. And so there's a lot of technology that is being developed by big tech and specifically more my role in the startups that are very hungry for the opportunity to license their technology. And so being creative, looking for opportunities, looking for great new tools that are out there, and not being afraid to reach out and potentially help bring their technology into advancing God's kingdom, into probably a vertical that's not high on their priority list. And so it's a great opportunity. So thank you. That's not working. So a great opportunity to try and, again, not go through all the cost and expense and time to build everything from the ground up. Let's be creative.
I should have included you in that as well.
Yeah, go ahead. I would second all of that. If you want to try and compete with NVIDIA building GPUs, then good luck. But or Intel and everybody else. So I think we have historically in the church sometimes had an attitude when it comes to big tech that like that's coming from over there, so we're not going to go near it because somehow maybe it's intrinsically evil. And I think we know full well that there are amazing Christian people working inside of many of these big tech companies as well, and we have the opportunity to influence there, which I think is important. And so partnering outside of it as well is trying to bring the advances that has happened in other parts of industry and bringing those in. I think that there's a lot of willingness as well from those big tech companies to partner with Christian kind of organizations, whether that's in ministry context or churches. So don't be afraid to use them, but also please don't spend all of your time, money, and effort trying to replicate cloud hosting. You're not going to do it better than the big guys are. And we may have issues with maybe the leadership sometimes of some of these companies, but we also kind of have a responsibility to be good stewards of our own resources. And I don't think it's always a great idea to be spending those resources trying to replicate something that already exists that's doing it very well.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of an interesting analog from the history of AI, which is that I think there's a temptation to, when you're in an organization, to think that your use case is special and to pursue like a specialized solution for your use case rather than, because that's like the first thing that comes to mind. I think it's like a deeply human thing, like I'm special, versus pursuing like a general approach that works. And actually, this is what's happened in AI, which is 15 years ago in NLP, we had idiosyncratic models and methods for tagging systems, parsing systems, and translation systems, and entity recognition systems. And then we had idiosyncratic models for vision, and then we had idiosyncratic models for speech. And thanks to the pursuit of general methods, like the idea of vectorizing everything, using common architectures, using a common training method, stochastic gradient descent. Now, the reason that progress is so fast right now is because everybody's using the same methods, and they're finding tools that apply across lots of different use cases. And that's why machine learning is moving so fast right now. And I think you could also apply that to human organizations too, which is rather than always thinking that your use case is special, pursue, in some cases, general purpose methods. And then if you're trying to optimize to move fast and reach the most people, then that's like the way to do it. There are obviously cases where, if you're building highly specialized tools for, brain surgery or something like that, you would like really want to specialize on that use case. But most business use cases are not that.
That's a very good question about profit, non-profit. So I have been running non-profit for many years. And usually the money is coming from business people who are making profits. So we have to love them, okay? And that's my first. Since yesterday, I went from non-profit to profit. I didn't change my organization like OpenAI did. But yesterday was registered the Hello Bible company in France, so I raised a few millions for that. So I'm now on the other side of and I really love it, by the way, because I prefer to give than to receive. So I think for the business people in the room or the people watching online, and we greet the guys online, I greet my wife. I think the goal also for us is kingdom impact, okay? The money is not the goal. The profit is not the goal. When we believe in Jesus, when we want to help building the kingdom, as we say. So at the end, if we make money, we want to give it. I want to give it. With my wife, we already decided. But it's not just about money, it's about technology. So Leo McLaren, who talked yesterday about Bible AI, for example, is doing a business. He's raising funds to create technology. Scott Beck is doing a business, is building technology. And if this technology that as business people we are building, we can make it part of what we give to the non-profit world, that would be awesome. So the non-profit organization don't have to spend all this money to build something that we need as business. So that would be my answer to your good question.
Just to build, I know we're at time, but just to build off that point for Eric, because I think this is important for us, is that we, for a long time in the church, as individuals, have not been willing to put our hands in our pockets to help our own spiritual formation. And what I mean by that is that the amount of ideas that you'll see come out of this room over the next couple of years will be built on the hope that someone's just going to give them money to make sure it happens, rather than actually developing sustainable commercial business models where individual Christians across the country and around the world go, that's valuable and I'm going to support it by paying for it. And I think that is a fundamental shift in the ecosystem that we need to see happen and that you guys should help make happen. Because the average American household has, even in the lowest economic bands, multiple streaming services paying hundreds of dollars a month, right, for content that does nothing to build up their belief and relationship with Jesus. But if I turned around and told you, and Terry, we've talked about it, like if Terry turns around and makes you pay $29.99 a month for YouVersion tomorrow, how many of you are going to put your hand in your pocket and pay a subscription fee? And unfortunately, I think many of you will say, of course I will. And then Apple will say your card has bounced. And that's a problem. That's a real problem because we're not willing to place the value on the work being done by people in this room and say that it's worthwhile paying for out of the abundance that we've already been given. And I think that that's a shift that we need to see in the ecosystem. So I think whether it's relying upon commercial models that are coming outside, but also developing our own sustainable business practices within the church and not saying that it's evil to do that, I think is a radical shift that we need to see happen.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for all your perspectives. I'm glad we were able to have a variety of viewpoints from a variety of perspectives over today and over yesterday. So yesterday, some of you were here, some of you weren't. I kind of gave a bit of a challenge for the panelists at the end with one last question. So I'll do the same today. And we're over time, but everyone else went over time, so I feel like I can go over time.
I was on time.
Yeah, you were on time. So
That was under time.
yeah, Spence was under time. We got good representation here today. Yeah. So this is a in one sentence question. So this morning we had a great start from Dal Anderson talking about risk taking and having faith and being faithful in risk taking. I'm wondering from each of your perspectives, if in one sentence quickly, if you could encourage anyone in this room in terms of stepping out in faith and trying new technologies or responsibly and not in a blind way, but in a faithful way, taking risks in your own ventures, in your own organizations. Is there in one sentence, something that has been helpful for you when you've thought about risk and entering into risk that might benefit those in the audience? Whoever can start.
I could start. One sentence.
One sentence. Where's Joel and Ulf are using Greek Room right now to make sure that it's one sentence and do the quality checking? Yeah.
Experimentation is your friend. Got to use less words than what I use.
Good one. Anyone?
Yeah, it was super inspiring to hear about faith and taking a risk. For me, it's special, because I have been in the non-profit world for many years. Now, I started 3 companies in the last 3 weeks. So I have the feeling of walking on the water. So it's kind of new world. So I'm taking risk because I believe that AI has a big potential to help people to connect with Jesus and to grow in their faith. I really believe it's a game changer technology that which we should take risk to use it for good and for God's kingdom.
I'll take a stab. The best destinations in life seldom have a straight line. And if we listen to the Holy Spirit and our Heavenly Father, what may seem like a wrong left or right turn can often lead to a very spirally but beautiful journey.
to great things.
What would you do if you weren't afraid?
I like that.
Thoughts? I would finish with, at the start of Joshua, it says, and Moses was dead. That's my favorite line in the Old Testament. And it's my favorite line in the Old Testament because he took on the most courageous of missions for 40 years, wandering in the desert, and he was utterly disposable because God can use any one of us to do what he called him to do. And so my one sentence is, be bold and very courageous. That's the call.
Thank you all. And let's give a hand for our panelists.